Okay, welcome back. Last time we went over just kind of the very basics. Welcome to Civ. What do I need to know to get started? How do I set up a game? What are some options I should make sure I have enabled or disabled? And walk through little bits and pieces of what are in the user interface here. If you have any questions about any of those, you're still confused about that, feel free to go back to the previous video at any time to kind of check it out. So in this game, we are Spain, and we are on easy mode. And so what we'll do now is we'll just take a look at where we have randomly fallen when we started this game. So we're by a coast, which is a good thing. We can get, we're on continents, so we know that there are going to be other land masses that we have to get through via boats. And by being near the coast, we can do that. We can build a harbor. We also have a nice little river here. But we got a couple of lakes. So sources of water are good things. They help us with food. The other thing we see here is we've got two little things of mercury, and those are going to give us luxury resources. Now, there's different types of resources in this game, and that's where I actually will go up here to this list of reports. And we don't have any right now, but we have strategic resources. Those are going to be items like horses or iron that you have to discover. And in order to build certain units or buildings or things like that, you need to have access to those strategic resources. Bonus resources are just that, things like rice or wheat or cattle. They're not necessary. You don't have to have them to be able to do anything, but you might get some extra food or gold or something if it's a certain type of bonus resource. And then luxuries are what give you amenities, and amenities keep your citizens basically happy. And so you want to be able to have enough amenities, and luxury resources provide one for 4 cities. And I'll explain that more as we go on. So you want to be able to have some luxury resource, at least one, in view when you first settle your city. And for the most part, all civs, except maybe 1 or 2 that have exceptions, are going to start with just a settler and a warrior. And the first thing we want to do is decide where we're going to put down our settler. And the game kind of gives you some suggestions of where to put stuff. So we get some thumbs down here on this particular site because there's no fresh water. All of them are going to say few luxury resources because we really only have the one. Where the difference between this one and this one, if we actually go ahead and turn on that settler lens, so again, down here at lenses, settler, it'll show us how much housing we get based on how much fresh water we have. So the dark green colors give us fresh water, and so we get 3 housing. If we have overcrowding, our people are not happy, and we have to have more housing. Coastal water gives us water, but it's not fresh, it's salt water. So we get only +1. If there's no water at all, you don't get any bonus to housing, and the red places you just can't build. So what you want to try to do is build, at the very least, on a green one. Ideally on a dark green one. You're going to get more housing that way. The other thing to consider is what our yields are. So if I go back here to map options and click show yields, we can see that, I can hover over this and see this information, that this particular hex gives us 1 food and 1 production. This one gives us 1 food and 2 production because it's on a hill. This one gives us nothing because it's a desert. And this one gives us 1 food and 2 production because it's on a forest. Now, if we decided to build our settlement here, we would lose that extra production because we'd have to chop down the forest to build our um, city. If we went over here to the hill, we wouldn't lose the production, um, because the hill doesn't go away when we build the city. But the difference is this has a freshwater resource because it's got this little delta here, whereas this doesn't. So this would give us more housing, this would give us slightly more production. And I'm actually going to decide to use my warrior as an initial scout and say, okay, well, what's over here? Is there any freshwater over here if I wanted to move over this way? And it's be quicker for him to go this way than this way. We don't want to lose that many turns trying to find the perfect place for a settlement. So no, we're not going to get any more freshwater here, but we did discover another luxury. So that's a good thing. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you build your city, you're initially only going to get the circle around it. Then eventually it'll expand. You can upgrade resources as far as 1, 2, 3 hexes away from your city. So if I build this right here, this city would not be able to reap the benefit of, let's say, this luxury resource unless I built another city closer to there. I wouldn't be able to get the benefit of these trees because they'd be too far away. 1, 2, 3. So I could never get the bonus from working that. And so we've got this trade-off here. Do we want to move? Do we want to stay here? I could wait a couple turns and see what's over this way. I could also, and maybe this is what I'll do, is we have 1 Mercury up here, but I'm pretty sure I can build my settlement on the Mercury, and it should give me the Mercury. So we're actually going to try that. It's going to move us away from these things, but it's going to get us closer to some hills, which will give us more production, some more woods, and kind of away from the desert, which we can't really use too much of that desert. So I'm going to take my 1 turn and move them here. And we get diamonds. So this is actually going to only be 1, 2 away. We can totally take advantage of that. So eventually we're going to want to mine these diamonds. And that's about all we can do. We can't pick a research yet. We can't pick a code of law. I mean, this is going to research for a while. We can't do anything there. There's nobody else. We have no more turns. We can't build anything. So that's it. That's our first turn. I'm going to head and click next turn. So now we're here and I want to go ahead and settle. So when you're on a unit, you're going to get a little pop-up here that gives you what you can do with these units. So what my health is, and your settlers are very vulnerable to barbarians or other people stealing them. They have no defense. So if a barbarian came over and stood on the same square as my settler, he'd steal my settler. And Alea just jumped up behind me. This again gives you that guide that I showed up here when I turned on that lens, as opposed to kind of clicking on it, and then how I make him move is I just right click where I want him to go. But you could also click the move button and left click where you want him to go. But I don't want to move him. That's where I want him. If I didn't want to do anything, if I wanted to just let the warrior keep going around, I'd skip the turn, or I could put him to sleep and say, I'm not going to worry about him for a while. But what I want to do right now is I want to found my city. And because I founded my city on a coast, I get a boost, I get a Eureka in sailing. So we'll worry about that later. And now we have, again, our warrior. Our warrior can fortify, which means he can just stand there, hold his ground. His defense will go up a little bit. And so if a barbarian or somebody comes in and tries to attack him, he'll hold his ground. He won't necessarily attack back unless we tell him to. If we have him on alert, on the other hand, he'll kind of wake up when somebody comes nearby. And all of a sudden, but if we do this, when you click next turn, it won't ask you, do you want to do anything with the warrior. It'll sit there forever until you manually wake it up. On alert, it'll auto wake up if something comes nearby that can threaten it. Again, we can skip turn if we have nothing we want to do with him, and right now we can move him. And so I want to keep exploring this immediate land around Madrid, so I'm going to have him go that way. And now we have more things to do because we've actually built our city. And so here's that initial. And so the first thing we have to do is to decide, well, what do we want to build in here? Now, the first things you have access to, a monument is going to give you +2 culture. And what culture does is increase the speed at which you get new tiles. So if before picking what we do, we have the city information screen, which is packed jam full of a lot of stuff. So I'll take the next 3 minutes and just kind of explain this. So here you can see how much this particular city, Madrid, if we had multiple, it wouldn't be the overall civilization, it would just be this city. Right now, based on what we're doing, okay, we are still on the Mercury, but we haven't been able to take advantage of it yet because we don't have mining. But once we do, we'll be able to do that. And because of that, we'll have some extra science because Mercury gives that bonus of +1 science that you can see there. 1 food, 1 production, 1 science. So up here, in this top right corner, you can see we have plus 1.3 culture per turn and plus 3.8 science per turn. And this is kind of a shorthand place to look at this. This also shows you how much food per turn. This city has how much production. This city has how much faith, how much gold. Now you might ask, well, where are all these coming from? Obviously, we have 1 science from the Mercury being here, but where's the rest? Well, we can actually click this little button and go, okay, well, what else is going on in this city? I'm going to skip the first one and head over to City Breakdown. The first thing it tells you here is how many possible districts you can have. Based on the population, you can only build a certain number of districts, and we are allowed to build 1. We haven't built any because we haven't built anything. Every city center, so your first city, but none of your other cities, would have a palace in the city center. So because this is your capital, you have the palace. So the palace automatically gives you +2 production, +5 gold, +2 science, +1 culture, plus we have +1 housing just from the palace, and +1 amenity from the palace. And we also can hold a great work of any type. And that's where that cultural victory comes in with the tourism stuff. If we had any wonders, we could see what they were here. If we had any trade posts, we could learn more about that. We don't have any religion set up, so there's no religious information. And then this next screen kind of is what can be used to help make sure that everything's running smoothly. So the first thing is your citizens, your food. So why do we care about food? That determines how quickly your population grows. So right now, we only have 1 citizen. That's what this one means. And in 14 turns, we're going to get a second citizen. 1 person is using, well, we're collecting 3 because we have, we're eating 2 because we have 1. And we need to accumulate a total of 15 food to get to the next one. So we're getting a growth rate of +1.1. So after about 14 turns, we'll have enough to gain a population. We get more, the more citizens we have, the more food we need. The more surplus we have, the faster we can grow. So when you're building things, when you're deciding what buffs you're gonna add on, what sort of additional resources you want, that's what the food matters with. The amenities all go into happiness. So we have 2 amenities, 1 because we're on the Mercury, and 1 from our palace. And so we actually only require 0 because we have 1 citizen and 1 city. So we're happy, and and so part of the reason we have these, modified food per turn, what our modifiers are, is because we get 10% citizen growth. So that's the 10%. And then down here is what we can keep track of for housing. So we have 6 housing available, which you can also see down here. We only have 1 citizen, so we got plenty of room. And we have 1 from the house, and we have 5 from our water. So that's kind of the city overview to keep track of stuff. And if you wanted to rename your city, you could. You don't have to look at this stuff all the time. You never have to look at this stuff, but it's there. And I think I'm over my time, so we'll stop here. And if it doesn't all upload and cuts off short, I will say that last couple stuff in the next episode. Thank you.